Hi, hello to everybody. On this last Wednesday in June, welcome to Seen and Heard Live, Hartford Stage's replacement or virtual cocktail party, as it were. I hope you all have drinks ready for the end of our hour. Just a way of celebrating theater and stories. And I'm thrilled tonight to be truly focusing on stories and the power that telling our own story can have, not only towards more self-knowledge and sort of a meeting of oneself, but also an extending of empathy and connection simply by the act of telling our own story. And today we will celebrate the stories of fathers with some wonderful colleagues I can't wait to welcome. First, Scott, will you join me? Scott Bartleson, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here, Scott.
Hi, everybody. So glad you've joined us tonight. For those who are new, just to give you a heads up, we really love having an interactive dialogue and conversation on Seen and Heard. So we will use different Zoom features if you're watching via Zoom. We've got a chat and we've got an ability to raise your hand. So if you have a comment or question, feel free to put that in the chat, or you can raise your hand. We might get a chance to call on you. Or if you have a question, you can also use the Q&A feature. If you're listening on Facebook Live, hello. Thank you for tuning in. And we're gonna monitor those comments as well. So you can put any thoughts or questions or ideas that you have, and we will bring those to the forefront and bring them into the conversation. So that's my shtick, and that's about it.
That's your spiel. We got to work on your Yiddish, friend.
I don't have that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Scott. So as I was saying, we at Hartford Stage deeply believe in the transformative and healing power of storytelling. Ursula Le Guin, the extraordinary fiction writer who we lost this year, talks about the power of language to transform and redeem, and that stories give people the words to know their own experience. This is true of theater, of poetry, of spoken word, of music, of the visual arts. Anything that helps us convey our own experience in the world to each other furthers the human cause. And we need that more than ever now. So first, I'm going to welcome, to begin our episode, as we always do, with some spoken word, language, the gift. So I am going to welcome Abdul Rahman I. Muhammad, Executive Director of My People Clinical Services. And I'm going to ask you, Abdul, to start with some of your poetry tonight. As part of our building our block, building our community, the transformative power of art and the transformative power of our connecting to each other. Welcome to Seen and Heard, Abdul. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thank you for having me tonight.
So I am going to turn this over to you for your poem, and then we'll discuss. So welcome. We're so grateful you're here.
All right, well, here we go. I'm a Black superhero. My superpower, playing with my kids for more than an hour. I cook breakfast, pack lunch, change diapers, but not that much. Help with homework, wash them up, read them stories, and show them love. I attend PTCs, watch My Little Pony DVDs, RSVP to tea parties. I proudly wear a shirt that reads D-A-D. I work, that's right, I have a job, and I'm married and in love with my wife. I've dedicated my life to doing what's right. I save the world every day by being a role model to my son, and I know he's not the only one who's watching, so I role model to sons whose fathers neglect to teach. Son, this is how you set, and this is how you shine. If they only knew the value of time and what a little time could do, they could probably say, I'm a Black superhero too. Thanks.
I'm in awe. That was so wonderful. I don't want to come back. I want you to keep reading. Thank you so much, Abdul. What a gift.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Tell us a little about you and poetry and the Fatherhood Project, which we are about to launch this episode on.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, for quite some time, I used to do a lot of poetry right in the Hartford area, greater Hartford area. I performed as Mira, it's the initials of my name backwards. And I had a partner by the name of Mind Evolution. And so we used to get out there and do a lot of poetry. All the while, I've had my agency, My People Clinical Services. And, you know, so we have a lot of focus on fatherhood. I wrote my graduate thesis on fatherhood. As a young father, I always have kind of like leaned towards wanting to be able to help and support and empower fathers. And so, you know, we have our Father to Father program here at My People Clinical Services and our Father Engagement Services that we do with the Department of Children and Families and Children. And over the last year, actually, we've kind of started expanding those programs out more into the community. And so that's kind of how we developed the manhood tree. And then we got to the Fatherhood Monologues, which we're going to talk about tonight.
Well, I am so honored that I get to collaborate with you and the folks we're about to bring on to show off this extraordinary work. Theater in action. I'll claim it as theater. It's poetry too, but you'll forgive me if I claim it all in its performative aspect as just the purest form of theater. So
go ahead and claim it.
Yay. Well, I'm going to introduce a few of your partners through this process. Yes?
Sounds good.
So,
let's have them.
Yeah, come on. I'm going to start with someone who I hope to know even better than I know now. My new colleague, Godfrey Simmons, Artistic Director of Heartbeat Ensemble. He and I are starting in Hartford, I think, together. I preceded you by just a little, Godfrey, but our common roots, our common artistic connections go way back. So I'm just thrilled to have you as a colleague and thrilled that Hartford Stage and Heartbeat Ensemble will find more ways to collaborate. So I'm going to bring on Godfrey and also Stephen Rader Ginsburg, one of the founders of Heartbeat, and a professor at University of St. Joe's. He's the Carol Ottorino, let me get this right, these things are important, Carol Ottorino Center for the Arts and Humanities at the University of St. Joseph. So welcome, Steve, one of the first people I got to meet when I moved to Hartford. So thank you for that amazing lunch. It was at the Polish
National Home.
It was a Polish National Home. So for two Polish Jews, what could be better? It was wonderful. And Anthony De Jesus, Associate Professor of Social Work and Equitable Community Practice, also at University of St. Joseph. So, and Godfrey maybe is about to join.
Yeah, we're bringing him in, Amelia, in just 1 second.
Yay, Godfrey, I need you. So, just to say how thrilled I am about this project and about collaborating together. I should share with our audiences, we started talking before our theater shut down. So we had talked about these monologues being in our lobby, on our stage, on the upper lobby, right? Of finding ways to really bring this as a live performance. Mm-hmm. So I'm not letting go of that, maybe next Father's Day, we'll all gather in our theater. But Abdul and Steve, while we're joined by our colleagues, tell us about how you two started collaborating and the goals of the Fatherhood Monologues project.
Go ahead, Steve.
You want to go way back to the early days here?
Go all the way back.
Do a shorter version, because I want to get all the monologues in here too. Monologues.
Yeah. So when Abdul said he went by Mira in Mind Evolution, worked with him. Heartbeat Ensemble had plays in the parks, and we toured plays for free in the outdoor parks of Hartford. So in that tour, we worked with musicians, we worked with storytellers, we worked with poets. And so we had opening acts who warmed up the stage for us. And so when we heard Abdul's poetry, we met Mira and Mind Evolution, we just went, you got to join us for all of them. Our entire, I don't know how much it was, 8 parks that summer, we hit them up. Yeah. So it was so fun just constructing stages, being at Pope Park, being at Elizabeth Park, being at all these parks, bringing poetry, voices of the neighborhood. And so we did that. And after that, you know, the artistic integrity that Abdul has and the creativity that he has was amazing working with him throughout that time. So and now at the University of St. Joseph, Abdul and I have been working on creating a program called Arts Mentors.
And I just want to throw in that Tony is on audio. Yes, Tony, you don't have video, but you're with us in audio.
I think he signed out and is coming back in to see if he can get the video up.
Okay.
Ignore me. You keep going. Sorry.
So Abdul and I have been curating performances for young people throughout in youth development programs. So Our Piece of the Pie, Job Corps, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, mentorship programs, youth development programs, and bringing them into the arts experiences. We partner that with our faculty. They have dialogue, they have class, they have a meal. So they get this full experience of what it's like to deepen themselves through an artistic experience on a college campus. And it opens up, you know, questions. And so when Abdul brought this project to the University of St. Joseph and said, hey, I'm thinking, you know, I'm working on this manhood tree and it's pretty complex, but one of the branches is fatherhood. And I think the best way to explore fatherhood is through this idea of monologues. And so I jumped on board right away, knowing that we would get people in. And what I call this is kind of like artists on the front line. I don't think they're, you know, they can't really be considered artists in some ways because, I mean, they can be considered artists, but we don't need to use the term artist because we all have this. Every single person walking on the street is a natural born storyteller. And we are all on the front lines of our own lives. And so this was a way to bring those front lines to our stage or to Job Corps. It could travel, it can be online. You'll see some videos later on. So, and Tony will talk later about its place in the classroom. But it is exciting, vibrant, contemporary work.
It's just awesome. Welcome, Godfrey. I'm so happy to see you.
Hey, great to see you.
And I'll just add, Steve, to what you're saying. I've been saying at Hartford State, you know, the term artist, just like the term art, both terms make me kind of uncomfortable. I feel like they're terms that other people can use describing all of us, but that we just have work to do. and we work on craft, and we work on point of view, and we work on expression, and you hope it gets to art, right? So, Godfrey, I'm just so happy you're in Hartford. So,
hey, me too.
so grateful for this collaboration among all the future ones that I trust we'll have.
Yeah.
Let me ask, start either with Godfrey or Abdul on this. I'll sort of let you guys jump in here. It's one thing for a person to just tell their story. It's another thing for it to be shaped, and here we go, through craft, I will say, all right? We're crafting stories so that the presentation of them is heightened in some way. We've all experienced someone just telling us a story who's not maybe a virtuous, not virtuous, a virtuostic, there we go, I got there, just took a while, a virtuostic storyteller. And we sometimes come in and out. These stories, my experience of watching the videos, are extraordinary. They're performances. So what does that mean in a process?
Abdul, do you mind if I start, or do you want to?
Go ahead, Godfrey. Go ahead. Yes.
Abdul gets me. He can get me going. It's really.
Yeah. Well, it's theater.
He's got my number. He's got my number.
Theater director to theater director, going, Godfrey, you know, come on.
I love you, Abdul. So I think what was interesting in terms of like the process and also about storytelling, and I think, because I think every culture has like great storytellers. There's a way in which cultures, I think, tell stories. There's a big storytelling culture, you know, in all of the different kind of like Jewish cultures. I know there's not just one monolithic Jewish culture, there's several.
Right,
and they're very specific, right? Yiddish is different from like, Reform. Those are different cultures, right? There's a big storytelling culture in Ireland, right? In terms of Irish storytelling. And within, for Black and brown folks, even within there are these different kinds of subsets. What was interesting and so kind of transformative for me in terms of working on this is that I feel like we were able to, there was a kind of, I feel like, shorthand for us to be able to just kind of connect with the ways in which, because I think when we tell stories naturally, like when we tell them authentically with each other, they actually do get heightened. And I think the more comfortable you are with the people that you're around, actually the more heightened they get in terms of its craft and its art, because you're sinking deeper into the cultural stuff, right? There's a way that Black fathers there is a way they're gonna come to a thing. Now, do I mean it's all the same? No, but there is there's a thread that kind of, I feel like, shapes that. And so being a Black father, I felt like, I had access to that and was able to engage in that process in a way that was super organic without kind of being kind of outside of it. But in terms of the process, they had it all. Like, these cats had it. And for me, what it was about, and I know some of them also worked with Chris Rivas in LA, it was about those couple of things to give them permission to not be perfect or to be like something that they weren't, something outside of being authentic. That their authentic connections were right and true and also better than any kind of perfection that they're thinking about would be. Right? Like, when they wrote some of the stuff, they some of them wrote alliteration, and it wasn't necessarily that they were planning on writing alliteration or rhyme. Some of them were. I mean, some of these cats, like, they're working at that level, right? Abdul Malik, like, that's what they do. Not everybody. That wasn't, we had folks that would have these schemes going on, these patterns in their writing, because they were writing from an authentic experience.
Yeah.
And I feel like our job is to get both the performer and the material aligned in its authenticity.
Abdul, I think that's wonderful, Godfrey. And I wonder, Abdul, what's the impact of having an audience for a story? How has that changed the making of the story, right? There's both the crafting for performance, and then there's actually the performance that's not just for the intimates. It's not just for the folks you're sitting with, but for a larger audience.
Well, what I think that was important about this project was that exactly we need an audience, because what we want to do is we want to correct the narrative about Black men, about Black fathers. We want to be able to tell you about some of the struggles that we're having, but how we persevere through those struggles. So we don't get, like, a lot of times if you just watch television, they'll tell you that we're not there, but somehow I was able to find 9, 10 Black fathers without even really trying. And so it's like they're all there, they're all engaged, and they all have a unique story. One of the things that I loved about the coaching process as well is that it was like all of us, like me especially, like, I didn't really want to get coached, right? But it was kind of like, right, Godfrey? I was like, I'm not doing the
You're
coaching.
A poet. You're done.
Yeah,
You're ready.
But the great thing about it was like we were able to, like, humble ourselves and take the knowledge from Godfrey and Chris and refine our stories a little bit more. It was crazy because, like, I did my training with Chris, and he only kind of said like a couple of words. Like, I changed a couple of words, and the words made it just like pop a little bit more. And I think that when you tell a story And I think it gives the audience, the reason the audience is so important is because it gives the audience a new perspective. You kind of have to be able to say, well, you know, whatever the media is telling us, now I have I heard 9 unique stories about fatherhood, and therefore everything that's negative can't always be true. And so I think it's a powerful thing to be able to speak your truth in front of other people instead of just with your close-knit friends and stuff.
It's huge. I want to pursue one more thing with both of you, Godfrey and Abdul, and then I want to welcome Tony. Hi, Tony. We've never met in person, so nice to meet you virtually for now. But you've both made allusion to this. I wonder if you could speak just a little more about what that crafting is. Abdul, you mentioned word changing. Godfrey, you mentioned sort of going to the essence of what a story is. I find that wonderful language because I know when I direct any play, it's about finding the essential voice. And sometimes it's about finding a certain line that speaks to me of what the meaning I want to bring to the work is. And Steve, as a director, I feel like you're part of this conversation as well. But it's a little more challenging when it's a person's story and it's nonfiction. It is real. So what's that balance like? How did you all proceed with that? And speaking for Chris as well, with a shout out to him for all the work he's done.
Yeah, you know, for me, it was one of the things I asked early on. I before I worked with them, I asked to like send me if you could like send either a line or a sentence.
Oh, that's great. It's the same way I think. Yeah.
Yeah, just like, you know, well, what's the one thing, right? The most important thing in terms of this particular piece, and so it gave me a sense to like, then I know what's important to the artist, and so I can kind of work that way, right? Because the artist is leading me,
right?
I'm not leading.
Just like the play leads one in a theater, right?
And so the experience and the story and that person and their essence, you know, and so, you know, and sometimes it was interesting because sometimes things would change when because, you know, we did these all in person. By that, I mean, we were out, you know, we filmed outside, and sometimes a thing would change when I was in, you know, the same vicinity with them, right? We were social distancing, but like we were there, that person is in the flesh doing their thing, and not that much, but sometimes it was like, oh, this is okay. And then, and again, I didn't say that much. It really was, like Abdul is saying, 1 or 2 or 3 things, which, of course, all my best directors probably are people who talk a lot less and actually gave me like 6 notes throughout the whole thing, right? That often is like the case. They just are able to kind of get the essence down to like, all right, I just need you to work on these 6 things, and it'll probably last throughout the whole play, right? Like the whole process.
The right question at the right time.
Exactly. And I think that was something that they appreciated, not letting too much. Also, we had to do a shout out to Zoe, Alonzo Beckett, who was the videographer for this.
And we'll see his work in a minute. It's amazing.
We are. He's like a gunslinger with and I understand what that term can mean, but I mean that he's just got that camera and he's just like have camera ready to travel.
It's not flow with it. It's just moving.
Right, and it's all from that hip hop video training that he's got, which is like, there's some major expertise there. But he was able to kind of have this sense of setting up shots, and that really helped them to shape the performance in terms, you know. So as a collaborator, Zoe's is off the charts. I've talked a lot, but.
No, that's awesome.
What I wanted to add is that I think that, you know, everybody in their stories, it was interesting. Like, I didn't ask anybody to come up with a story, a specific type of story. And so what I thought was cool is like the emotion that comes out in the stories. I mean, I'll say me in particular, I'm a crier, right? So it's like I cry all the time. But it's kind of like one of those things that out of all the stories that I could have told about fatherhood, you know, like some of us, we picked some of them were like heartfelt, some of them were, you know, funny, some of them were, you know, critical moments that I felt like I thought even that part of it, coming up what we wanted to be able to share it with the world is it was also a huge part of the process. And I think that like the other performers also challenged, I feel like they challenged me as a somebody that, you know, that thought I was, you know, I'm a poet, so I can just do one of my poems and, you know, at the first practice. And then when I heard their stories, I said, oh, I got to really step my game up because these guys really came with some really wonderful stories.
They all were saying that. They all were, there's like a chat like, uh-oh, they threw it down. And it's like, oh, man. And they watch each other. They would watch, because some of them came out. Zoe kind of released a couple of them. Yeah. And they watch them. They just be like, oh, dog, man, I gotta.
Well, and we're about to welcome them all on, which will be great to hear their thoughts. Yeah. So cool. I wanted to, Tony, welcome. Steve and Tony, could you guys speak a little bit about the relationship between the Autorino Center and the Department of Social Work with the Fatherhood Monologues? How did this project come to be?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, and
so glad you're here.
We our MSW Master of Social Work program has a long-standing relationship with My People Clinical Services as one of our sites where students do their clinical internships. And I think it was through that where I first met Abdul and learned about the work of My People and saw My People as one of the agencies that really enables our students to understand a community-based perspective on providing clinical services. And in almost a simultaneous way, as Steve got to USJ and the Autorino Center and really began to impact our campus, reached out to faculty and how could we bring art and performers to the campus to engage with students to advance their learning in ways that were more impactful than just an academic method, right? Or that complemented that in ways that were moving and personal and emotional, and that really reached students, right? And so I think in this regard, with other performances, had the opportunity to work with Abdul and some of the young people in processing and preparing for some of the performances. Steve would reach out to our faculty and say, these are some of the initiatives and artists that we're looking to bring. How can we integrate them into your curriculum? So I think that has brought us to the point where this year, I think we have probably the opportunity for the most impactful collaboration. So in this regard, in February, I was able to bring my class. It's a research class, integrative seminar, capstone class of advanced MSW students to the Fatherhood Monologues performance that was on our campus in February. And one of the things that I knew was that a number of my students were working on projects that were precisely around fatherhood engagement in social work services. And in a couple of ways, this is very relevant to social work and to mental health, and certainly to the larger moment of critical awareness of the disproportionate impact of every social economic structure in our society on African Americans, on African American men, and on men of color. And that one of the ways that manifests in social work and clinical services is the lack of fatherhood engagement, and often the perception that fathers don't want to be involved, are not going to be involved, or would resist being involved as meaningful participants. I think as one of the performers, Demetrius, puts it, I want you to know that I'm a parent-teacher conference dad, right? And all these other meaningful forms of engagement. So hearing Demetrius and other men talk about their stories, performing their stories, was certainly very moving and powerful for me, but also for many, if not all of my students, and had the opportunity to see some of that reflected in the quality of their work. And so in that regard, I'm excited to, with another colleague of mine, Dr. Christiana Best, to integrate the Fatherhood Monologues this fall semester in 2 courses that we're teaching and are going to be co-teaching, human behavior in the social environment. So we haven't quite figured out exactly how we'll do that, but I imagine some of that will be linking to videos of the performances. Should we be, and we're planning to be, at least begin the semester in a face-to-face format as appropriate, perhaps have some of the men and or Abdul come on in and engage with students. And we're going to be discussing very soon this summer ways to collaborate and document in an academic format some of the work of the Fatherhood Monologues and the larger Manhood Tree initiative that Abdul is leading.
I love this. I mean, this is so exciting. It reminds me, it sends me back in a different way. I was at one of the first readings of something called the Vagina Monologues, right? Which before that came out, that wasn't a word one said on in public in any way. But seeing Eve Ensler's work and how oh, I think I've lost you all.
I can still hear you.
Stable.
We still
Am I
hear
back?
you.
Am I back?
I see.
I said the V word and it just all cut out. It was a scary
That's
moment.
very funny.
Internet freaked out.
But I was just thinking of how much the sort of early, the sort of the feminist approach to monologues, to one woman, to women sharing their experiences caught on, so that this could really, the fatherhood monologues could have really as strong an influence, if not stronger, given the need for these voices to be heard. Steve,
Yeah.
just a few thoughts from you on all this, and then I wanna show Malik's extraordinary video so we actually see what we're talking about.
Sure. Yeah. You know, absolutely, the Vagina Monologues came right to mind when we were talking about this, especially with Abdul choosing monologues as it.
Right. It's so cool.
Parallels it right there, and it really challenged my thinking in terms of, well, what kind of bar do we need to get to? What are we doing to challenge and liberate men as much as the Vagina Monologues have had a liberatory effect on women? So it really strikes on the heart of the masculine prejudices, the masculine presuppositions that people have, especially with men of color. And so this opportunity, and what I've seen with the men in their work, is the remarkable vulnerability, the remarkable truth-telling, the remarkable connection that they have. And when we perform this at University of St. Joseph in partnership with the Office of Diversity for Black History Month, we put out 50 chairs and we had 160 people show up. And I heard from so many people in the audience who discovered University of St. Joseph for the first time because they saw it on Facebook. They came, they said, I need to hear these stories of Black men told by Black men as their own, not filtered through some crime drama or something on TV and mainstream. But putting that, and Amelia, I'm sure you can relate, having come from Emerson, you know, putting that in the context of the academy and working with Tony, the theater and education have the same goal. We are both radicalizing experiences. We radicalize the self through catharsis. So education is the process of catharsis. We're reinventing, we're purging ourselves, we're becoming better people by knowing, gaining our knowledge base. When we're in the theatrical experience, we're learning things that we don't know, we don't even know. That's so right. When we see what Malik's piece coming up, I'm sure 99% of this audience who's going to be watching it, you'll learn something you didn't even know you didn't know. That is education, that is theater, that is catharsis. We will be evolving ourselves to be better people and and better in community. And so this theater work, the arts work embedded in classrooms, bringing frontline artists who can connect and teach our kids what they don't know. We are graduating mature, ready to serve young people. And by going to the theater, being patrons of Hartford Stage, hearing the stories that are on that stage, we're learning what we don't know and becoming more full, total human beings.
That's right. And learning and transforming aren't arduous. It's the joy of the work.
And when these guys worked with Godfrey, worked with Chris, did this whole process, I loved it so much. Where, you know, as theater has been my craft for 25 years, and seeing guys who are working and delving into that craft, going through their catharsis. And I found out in social work, it's called narrative therapy.
Right,
so,
right. I just learned about that too. It's what we do.
And then I realized, wow, I put myself through narrative therapy for 25 years as a theater maker, and I didn't even know it. And it's so good for all of us as humans. We're like addicted. We need it because it helps us grow as individuals. So I can't wait to get to the guys and hear more about their.
So on that note, that is just a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much, Scott. Let's turn to this amazing video. I introduced you all to Malik and to his monologue in the Fatherhood Project.
Good morning, young king. This is your father speaking. It's 6 in the morning, and I can't stop thinking. See, you haven't been born yet, so I'm speaking to you through your mother's belly. I can't wait for you to come home, kid, because me and you, we go together, like peanut butter and jelly. And yes, young king, one day, we'll travel the world. But don't get it twisted. You see your mama? She's still my chocolate swirl. I have so many things to teach you. You know, father and son things, like how I was gonna name you my junior, but I wanted you to have your own wings. Now, never shake a man's hand while you're sitting down. Keep a close circle, and remember, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Always keep your word and look every man in the eye. And most of all, when it comes to your queen, never tell a lie. Because the lie you will hear in this country is that you are not enough. They'll weaponize your skin, assume you're guilty before they put you in handcuffs. Now, there's a part deep inside of me that wants to tell you to dress nice and talk right so that you fit in, not get viewed as a threat, and everything will be all right. However, I'm not raising you to be somebody else's boy. I'm raising you to be your own man, to stand up, 10 toes down, to take care of your own family. And you feel that blood beating in your chest? That comes from kings. You, my son, are the reason the caged birds sing. Now, never doubt yourself, and always remember whose you are. You're your daddy's son. That means you're powerful beyond measure. You're a leader. You're a protector. You're special. You're loved. And one day you will change the world. Now I know what you think.
It's amazing. It's so extraordinary. So without further ado, let me bring on Malik Champlain, whose video we just saw. Thank you for that story. And some of the other fathers in this project. So forgive me if I mispronounce anybody's name. You have full permission to mispronounce mine next time. So, but Jean Amos Lys, Albert Gray, Demetrius Chambly, Keith Davis, Jesse White, Torrico Satterfield, and Kevin Booker. Welcome all of you to Seen and Heard. Yeah, what a great group. Talk to us a little, Abdul, about Malik's video as he comes on, or Godfrey. I mean, it's great video work, absolutely, but his voice.
So, yeah, man, I just wrote a little bit of an off-color chat to Abdul. He got me crying over here and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah.
And I saw it while he was doing it. You know, yeah, you know, it was, I don't really know what to say. I keep going back to authenticity. It's just, you know, it's just authentic. And you know, he's a poet. He's got a certain, but they were all like that, right? I have to say that there's something about the fact that they are a crew. There's something about the importance of all of them to each other, the building of the community. I think that's the thing that just grabs a hold of my heart, and just, you know, it's that they are there for each other. And I think the more rooms, spaces that are like that Abdul and these men created, and it's when we were in villages, or when we were kind of like in smaller towns or whatever, that's what you had. You had something like that probably, right? I just, it's
right.
really about the community.
As you said, every culture, has a place for a story circle, has a place for a shout out of experience.
Yeah.
Welcome, gentlemen. We're so glad you're with us. And hopefully more of you will join. No, thank you. It's really an honor to host you here. I thought I'd just throw out a question for everyone to answer as they see fit. Cool with you guys? It's just really about all of us speaking with each other. Yeah, thank you. So if you could describe the process of creating your monologue in one word or phrase, what would it be? And you can all unmute, just join in.
Wow. For me, I'd say it was therapeutic.
Wonderful. A word or phrase that describes this process for you, of either making it the first time on your own, or building it as a community.
Guys, you got to talk. Take your stuff off mute. And, go ahead, Book. You got yours off mute. One word.
I would say life-changing and inspirational.
Yep, I would say just iron sharpens iron. Just being around a great group of guys. I mean, it was like a camaraderie thing where we were kind of going down an assembly line and just saying, hey, you know, Abdul came with some fire, I got to retweak mine. So it was just a great brotherhood, and us just working with each other to become better.
I would say school. That's the one word I would use to describe it, because, man, the lessons I learned, I wouldn't learn them anywhere else. And, you know, it was incredible to be in that room, to be around those guys.
No, one of the things I would like to say is, like, all of us didn't necessarily know each other at the beginning of the project. So, like, some of us might have been friends, or, you know, one step away from each other. And so the project and the greater manhood tree, because a lot of the guys also participate in the manhood tree discussions. And then we start participating in other, like, so Demetrius does the 2020. And so we start going over to the 2020 events. And so by being a part of the project, I think it opened the door for us to become closer and start forming a bond as men. So I think that was another cool part of it, is that, you know, this is it's going to be long standing. It's not just for this project. It's kind of like we've filtered out into the community as well.
What's something that changed in the work, either through your influence with each other or through Godfrey or Chris? Like, can you think of one thing that sort of shifted in your story or your view of your story?
Well, one thing with Godfrey, as he stated, he only gave probably about 3 different edits that he would like me to work with, because my monologue, it was so deep and sensitive, that talks about a struggle with me fighting for more time with my daughter, and which actually ended up in a courtroom. So it wasn't the words that was changed, it was the way I spoke about it that he was able to help me on.
Awesome.
I agree with that. And I think for me, one of the things that is still blowing my mind to this day is how Godfrey told me to just change 2 letters in my monologue, and how it completely changed the essence of what I was trying to say, right? And it was basically, it was a line that said, you know, you don't get out of this until death do you part, talking about marriage. But the line right before that talked about having children. And then he made me change this to that, right? And put more emphasis on that. And it just changed the whole you know, idea, you know what I mean? And it was amazing. And so for me, I like words a lot. I use a lot of them. And so for that, to me, I was like, wow, like that really, you know, as I go out and speak or do whatever, it's really shaping just the way that I move forward. Just notice also, Abdul doesn't have a tie on. I have a tie suit jacket.
Very sharp. Very sharp. A couple of you were making me feel very underdressed. You know, it's just like very.
But
Yeah. Go ahead.
One of the things I kept as part of this process was that it was thought-provoking. And I work with Chris, and you know, we thought we were good to go. We got this down. I don't know why we need 2 coaching sessions, but the way Chris approached it, it made it more thought-provoking. Okay, so what do you want people to take away from this? It made it a little bit more just meaningful, and it made me think a lot more about the whole story and what it meant. And along with Abdul's manhood tree, you start with being vulnerable, but the community aspect of having 9, 10 other brothers and up to 25 on the calls helped you build your strength up. So I appreciated the process, very thought-provoking. And one thing I'll just add is I was asked at the beginning, what would you do if you saw your father today? And I was so upset. I said I'd fight him. And through working with this group of guys together and just transitioning and reflecting, now I changed that and said, hey, I'd tell him I love him, right? So all that's on the inside, it just took this group, this vulnerability to help me get that out. So much appreciation for this whole entire process.
for me, I work with Chris. Chris is just wow.
And he's like done a lot of moth. This is like we should bring out, this is kind of influenced by the moth style of storytelling as well, right?
Yeah. And at first I was upset with him because I had my stuff down packed. I thought I had it. So, and then it was too long. So he asked me to cut some of it. And everything I cut out, man, those are some stuff. What I don't want to cut out any of it. So, yeah. And I had to humble myself. I'm like, man, he's the coach. He knows what he's doing. And he started to say a sample of his work. I was like, yeah, this guy knows stuff. So I had to listen. So, and he really helped me to get the story out, the meaning of it, the emotion out. And he gave me a few words here and there and made a huge difference. And when I was filming it, Garfield was there. So Garfield is just on the level. So the ending of my story, he just told me, man, just say it like this instead. I was like, but I thought I got it. He was like, no, try this one. I was like, no, he's right. He got this. So it was a good experience. And I'm forever grateful for Chris and God.
Chris told me to add some more to mine, so he told you to take away. He told me to add more.
Yeah.
More, Abdul.
You lied. He didn't tell you.
I don't think that's a good thing to share right now. What do you hope that's seeing these monologues, I want to get it right? What do you hope will happen to folks who watch it? What kind of impact do you see your stories having? Yeah, Kevin. Oh, sorry, Jean.
So for me, what I want people to get out of it is that you can choose what kind of father you want to be. You may have had a bad experience with your own father, or whatever it is, you can choose what kind of father you can be. It may not be easy. You might need help to get there, but ultimately you can choose the kind of father you want to be. That's what I want people to get out of.
Welcome to yep, glad you're here. Yeah, go ahead, Kevin. Sorry.
Yes, I would like to say what I would like people to get out of this is that Black men are not a monolithic group, and Black fathers are not a monolithic group. And it changes, I would like to see it change the community's perspective of Black men. And that's why I want to thank Abdul, Steve Ginsburg, Jeffrey, Godfrey, Chris, all of them just for allowing us to have this narrative therapy, because this allowed us to tap into our inner selves and also to tap into our greatness so we can let the world see it as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this with all of us at Hartford Stage and to everyone listening out there.
I was going to say as well, there's a couple of things. One being the fact that there are some lessons that we have learned that we're also able to impart into the next generation, and making sure that those who look at these, they can also take a little bit from our stories and use them within their own lives. And then the other piece of it, like the bigger umbrella, is that you have a bunch of men of color who are working together, right, in order to make something beautiful. And I think the narrative has been that we strive and we fight and we argue and we're violent, things of that nature. But we all came together and really like made each other better, right? We looked at it, like Demetrius said, we looked at each other like, whoa, that was good. All right, let me do this. Yeah. All right, yep, that was excellent. Let me do that and let me change it. So it wasn't really a competitive thing. It was more like an uplifting thing. And so for people to see that on this stage, you know, like everyone who had a part in this, thank you all so much.
Well, thank you. Where does this go next, guys? What do you all hope happens next with your own monologue, with this whole, I mean, you know, I want you all at Hartford Stage next Father's Day. So, you know, we'll work on that. But what do you all want to have happen next? How will this evolve?
You know, I think I would like to say that I'd love to see, Albert talked about the impact that it had on him and his father. The real goal for me is that, right, to see fathers within their communities to start mending those relationships, or even exposing the quality of their relationships, that the world would see that there are a lot of great dads out there, that a lot of dads would see that it's worth it to go through the process to rekindle the relationship, to build a relationship, to gain entry and access into their communities with their kids. Me personally, I continue to see that that's what it did for me. My son lives in Florida. He comes up during the summer, just got here, and he's 13 years old. So I told him, son, I'm gonna teach you 13 new things this summer.
That's awesome.
But that comes from doing this process with these guys. And what Abdul has done for us and brought us together, it's become a gateway into our own personal lives. And so I pray that it becomes a gateway into the lives of other men.
How would other men join? How would other fathers join? Abdul, where would people turn if they wanted to help build their own stories with all of you?
That's a great question. So, I mean, so our plan is to continue to grow the crew for the monologues. And so right now, first I want to say that our hope is that this crew will be able to go on a national tour to colleges, conferences, different stages, different communities, and be able to continue to spread positive information about fathers and change narratives. But I think that if somebody wants to get in contact with us, you know, you can go to the Fatherhood Monologue page on Facebook. You can go to the Manhood Tree website. You can contact My People Clinical Services. You can hit up Steve or Godfrey, because they'll continue to be a part of the administrative team around this. And I mean, I'm sure any of the guys that are a part of this, they can hit them up as well, and we'll get back to each other, because like I said, our hope is to be able to, so like right now we have 9 videos that'll be up over the next, you know, we're on number 4. So over the next 9 days, we'll be putting out a video a day. But our hope is to be able to have hundreds of videos of fathers telling their monologues, telling their stories. And once again, I think as the more you can, you know, tell these stories, what it does is every time somebody teaches you something new, you can't deny it anymore. You can't say, so now that you've heard it, you've got to be able to say, or now that you've seen it, you know, like, I mean, this alone, right now, I love looking at Zooms, because you have all the faces, and I get to see all my brothers on here, you know, and so it's like it's a great thing to be able to see all these men that have made a commitment. That's the other thing. This is not just about fatherhood, because they committed. They've been involved in this project since the beginning of the year, and you know, here we are in June, and they're still in the project. They've also done the other pieces of the project. So for me, it's like, imagine if we went across the country and we pulled groups of men together where we worked on monologues, we did the manhood tree, we went on different activities together, and we lifted each other up. I think that it would be an amazing thing. It would be amazing.
It's and I think, you know, yeah, with schools and theaters, universities, colleges, community colleges and theaters around the country. Steve, were you going to say something?
I just want to add one more thing. You know, Abdul and I have been talking about this a lot recently, and you know, people can reach out to us, and we're developing an intake form. So if you're interested in telling stories, you might want to come in and be with an affinity group. Like, this group of men has an affinity. This is a Black men's group. Future groups might be more Black men's groups. It might be cross-racial groups. It might be a Latinx, a Colombian. It might be a Jewish group. It might be an intentionally diverse economic group or low-income group. So we're going to have an intake form for people to diversify that. We're also, because of Abdul's strength of coming, you know, at My People Clinical Services, we will be extending this as well to support systems through like Department of Children and Families or other sorts of support services, because this is therapeutic, strength building, everything we've been hearing today, not only builds ourselves, but our group. And that intake form will be important. So reach out and let us know who you want to be grouped with.
I have one more question. Oh, sorry, Abdul, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that I didn't tell Amos this yet, but we're going to do the manhood tree for our fatherhood program here at My People going forward. You know, we've used different curriculums and all that stuff over the years, but now I just believe that there's so much more that we can offer. So I was able to kind of like pilot with the groups that we've done over the last few months, and be able to see how the impact of the manhood tree discussions, the impact of the fatherhood monologues, the impact of like our dad. We haven't done our dad ad events yet, but we're starting like this weekend. We're going, a bunch of guys are gonna go fishing. And so when you start putting all these things together, we already know it's therapeutic. And so we want to be able to kind of like go from it being therapeutic. I mean, it's one thing to be therapeutic. It's another thing to be able to form relationship beyond the therapeutic relationship. Like, so it's really exciting about what we're going to do.
And I have a question for you guys, for all you performers, writers, creators, okay? And I also want to bring on Alonzo. I think your brilliant jazz-infused videographer, I think, is with us. So as he's coming on, I want to ask you guys something. You're creating literature. You're creating autobiographical literature, right? How would you feel if someone else did your monologue? Can you imagine that? I mean, we mentioned Eve Ensler's monologues. These are extraordinary pieces. So they start as self-expression and you know, a kind of, you know, theater therapy, absolutely. But you guys are making work. You're making art here. A phrase as I said earlier, I don't use lightly. How would it feel, do you think, to hear someone else do your speech?
I for one would be ecstatic if Will Smith or Denzel did my monologue. I would be
we're going to call Will Smith.
overjoyed.
And you know what? Hartford Stage would love to have Will Smith on its stage too. No question.
No, but honestly, I think it would be awesome to have someone else do it, because then I would be able to enjoy, almost like with the video, I got to actually like sit and watch, versus actually like doing it myself and having to memorize and think about the inflection and all that. So it'd be really cool to see someone else do it.
Be interesting. Right? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm looking forward to it because I remember Godfrey promised that he's gonna turn us into superstars, right? So all
right, Godfrey, set it up. Sign those contracts.
So I think it'll be interesting to watch somebody else.
Right? Because it's so personal, but when you get it out there, you've crafted something that many other people are going to connect to and probably would gain from saying your words.
I think I've been waiting, for Idris to give me a call, Idris Elba, because I believe that I'd like to hear his accent on my words. And Godfrey said that he had his contact information. So
that's good.
Godfrey, let's go, Godfrey. We're taking too long.
We're
taking too long, Godfrey.
We're doing a mix-up here. Alonzo, welcome. Thank you for your amazing video work. Really thrilled to have you join us.
Thank you.
What is it? Is it different to film these guys in live performance, given the personal nature of the work? What was it like to be on the other end of the camera as they worked?
Well, I mean, they made it easy. They had like they were saying earlier, they already had their coaching from the great Godfrey, as you can, everyone's. So they had and they practiced a lot already. So like you say, perfect practice makes perfect or whatever. So they had it pretty much down. So the only thing they were probably more nervous than I was. They were nervous because I had the camera in their face and tell them to look over here and do all this stuff.
Yeah.
But other than that, they had it down. They just had to get used to me with the camera walking around. Things like that.
It was awesome. It's really a thrill to have all of you guys here. I'm going to share that as we're wrapping up, that we always end with a poem and a collective reading of a poem. So for those of you who are with us on Seen and Heard, you're in for a real treat. We asked everyone who wrote a monologue, these great guys who are with us here, to pick their favorite line or a key line for them. And so the poem we're about to hear is actually created collaboratively. Yeah? Godfrey, you look like you're thinking something. And you're mute.
And I'm muted, yes. I think we lost a person.
Right, that's, I was like looking at you looking worried, and I was thinking, we need everyone to read this poem.
I know.
All right.
I can read.
There's Keith back. Thank you for coming back, Keith.
Right. We're missing Kevin. Kevin had to bounce.
So Godfrey, do you mind reading? Yeah, you read his line. So we're about to hear a poem made up of lines from each of these extraordinary fatherhood monologues. I'll go away to give you guys more stage space, and I'll come back at the end of the poem.
All right, brothers, y'all ready?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
All right. Give me a second.
Yeah, give me a second.
All right. Where'd Booker go? I knew Booker was gonna have a suit on.
Sometimes you
Godfrey, you may need to. Godfrey and Abdul, you may need to read more than one line.
All right.
Let me know when, Albie.
Are we ready?
Ready?
Yep. Not trying to find it.
He's at the end.
Who else did we lose?
I got it.
Are you gonna do Malik's as well?
All right.
Oh, Malik's? Oh man, that's the last one. Abdul, you do that one.
I don't have it, so we're gonna do
Oh,
it.
okay, I'll do it then.
All right, go, Jesse.
All right, guys, thank you.
The mark of a great father is that his children want to emulate, no, transcend his work.
I'd hear the cheer of daddy's home, and then the pitter patter of little feet running to welcome me home with love.
You see, my dad taught me that saying I love you is part of being a man.
I know that there is no perfect father, but every day on this earth, I'm working at it, and I'm committed to perfecting our fatherhood.
You see, my father carried his pain more than he carried me.
Blood doesn't make you a father.
I stress to the courts, I'm not a weekend dad. I'm a parent-teacher conference dad. I'm an everyday homework dad. I'm gonna take the kids to the doctor dad.
Through the hard lessons, my father taught me everything I know about a man's responsibility to his friends, family, and community.
Never second guess your worth, and always remember whose you are. You are your daddy's son. That means you are powerful beyond measure. You are a leader, you are a protector, you are special, you are loved. And one day, you will change the world.
That was beautiful. It was truly beautiful. Thank you all so very much for extending Father's Day for a few more days, making it feel even more relevant now than, given the moment we're in this country, having your voices and your artistry, your craft, and your honesty. Authenticity, as Godfrey said. Thank you all so much. Looking forward to seeing where this whole project goes, and giving you a home at Hartford Stage as we all move forward. I'm going to welcome more folks on now for our final toast. So let Scott know, Scott, do they have to? Yeah, people. If you want your video turned on, we'll welcome everybody on now for a final toast. So this is one of our community events at the end. Yeah, all right. So everybody pull out their drink. We'll welcome all the other folks. Hey, there's Cynthia Ryder, our fabulous managing director. Rachel Alderman, thank you for all the work that you've done. Rachel has been one of our great bringing together of community folks at Hartford Stage many years before Cynthia and I got there. So come one, come all. Before we toast, I'll say that next week we're going to do Seen and Heard's going to focus on adaptation, on how we adapt texts to the stage. I've been working with a playwright named Kirsten Greenwich for years and years, a wonderful playwright. Kirsten and I have been working on a couple different things, but most recently, as in like the last 8 years, but who's counting, on adapting the book Common Ground about the Boston busing crisis. We're in the middle of a workshop right now on Zoom. So Kirsten and some of that cast and the dramaturgs for that project will be joining next week. And selfishly, I want to show that work to all of you, and also talk about how we adapt. How do we adapt from one format to another, from one artistic form to another, given the year ahead, and how we're all having to find ways to adapt in all sorts of manners. Inconceivable even, 4 months ago. So on that note, to the Fatherhood Project, to the Monologues, to you extraordinary gentlemen who've put this piece together and inspired all of us, to the Hartford community, to our neighbors, to our block, to Hartford Stage.